Rachel hadn't worn that black silk dress in almost 3 years. Not since their second anniversary, when Brian had actually looked at her like she was the only woman in the room. That night, his eyes had been warm, his smile real. But now, as she stood in front of the mirror applying her lipstick, she realized something. She wasn't doing this for him anymore. She was doing it for herself. Still, when he surprised her that morning with dinner reservations at their favorite restaurant, the place where they'd first celebrated love, she allowed herself to hope. Maybe this was the moment. Maybe he had finally seen the cracks in their marriage and wanted to mend them. Maybe, just maybe, he was ready to put her first. The restaurant glowed in golden candlelight, the clink of glasses and murmurs of couples creating a soft symphony of romance. Rachel took her seat across from Brian, and for the first time in months, she felt a spark of something like peace. They ordered wine. He joked about his coworker's mishap in a Zoom meeting. She laughed. It wasn't forced, but just as the waiter placed a warm breadbasket between them, the front doors of the restaurant burst open with a force that shattered the illusion. "Why didn't you invite me?" The voice didn't belong in a setting like this. It cut through the room like a jagged knife, turning every head, including Rachel's, toward the source. Vivian. Her mother-in-law stood there, bold as brass, in a leopard print blouse and enough perfume to suffocate a small animal. Her face was twisted in indignation, as if this intimate dinner between a husband and wife was some kind of personal attack on her existence. Rachel froze. Vivian marched toward their table, with the confidence of a general reclaiming stolen ground. "You said you were staying in tonight?" she hissed at Brian. "You knew I wanted to try this place." Rachel looked to Brian, waiting for him to say something. Anything. Instead, he did the unthinkable. He pulled out the empty chair next to him and said, "Just sit, Mom. It's fine." Rachel's heart stopped. She blinked once, twice. Her voice came out steady, too steady. "You two enjoy," she said, rising from her chair with the calm of a woman whose soul had already detached. "Because I'm done with this marriage." The restaurant fell completely silent. Not a fork clinked, not a breath stirred. All eyes followed her as she walked out, not in rage, not in tears, but in something far more powerful. Certainty. Before we jump in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. She didn't cry that night. Not even when the Uber pulled up in front of her best friend's apartment and she sat in the back seat, still in that black dress, her hands clenched so tightly in her lap they left half-moon marks on her palms. Her friend, Maya, opened the door without a word. One look at Rachel's face and she knew. Rachel stepped inside, kicked off her heels and sank onto the couch. The silence between them was warm, not demanding. When Maya finally asked, "Want to talk about it?" Rachel shook her head. Not yet. The next day she didn't go home, or the day after that. She needed space to think, to feel what had been buried under years of playing the good wife. The more time passed, the clearer everything became. This wasn't just about a dinner, it was about every time Brian let his mother speak for both of them. About the way Vivian criticized Rachel's cooking, her career, even her laugh, without ever being checked. About the time she had rearranged Rachel's kitchen because she couldn't find anything, and Brian had simply chuckled and said, "That's just Mom." Rachel had asked him, begged him to set boundaries, but he always said the same thing. "She means well." No, she didn't. She meant control. Now Rachel saw it all with terrifying clarity. The missed moments, the silences that used to be filled with laughter, the way Brian always seemed just a little too quick to agree with Vivian, a little too slow to defend his wife. And suddenly, she wasn't just hurt. She was furious. She returned to the condo on the third evening. Brian was on the couch, a controller in his hand, playing the same video game he always did. He looked up, startled, as if she were the one intruding. "You feeling better?" he asked, voice casual. She stared at him. "You know what happened at the restaurant, right?" He shrugged. "You know how she gets. It was easier to let her sit than cause a scene." Rachel's breath caught. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said them. Like it was nothing. Like she was the one being unreasonable. "You could have stood up for me," she said, her voice low. "Like a husband, like a man." He had no answer. That was the moment she stopped asking. No more pleading. She moved through the condo like a shadow, no longer engaging. She slept in the guest room, ate alone. She started separating their lives, piece by piece, a new bank account, a P.O. box. She copied documents, collected receipts, quietly contacted a lawyer, because this wasn't going to be a dramatic exit. This time, Rachel wasn't leaving in tears. She was leaving with evidence. And Vivian? She had no idea what was coming. A week passed. Rachel was methodical, careful with every step. She kept her voice even, her expression unreadable. She didn't raise her voice, didn't argue. She wanted Brian and Vivian to think she'd cooled down, that maybe things were settling. But behind the scenes, she was building a case. It started when she casually brought up the condo finances, pretending to review some old emails. Brian brushed her off with a tight smile. "Why are you so worried? Everything's handled. We're good." Except they weren't. Rachel went back through every document from when they bought the condo. She noticed something that hadn't stood out before. Vivian's name was listed as a silent investor. Rachel hadn't seen that clause, hadn't signed anything that included it. She remembered how Brian had insisted they use his mom's friend's real estate agency. "We'll get a better rate," he'd said. Now she wondered if that better rate came with hidden costs. Her lawyer confirmed it. Vivian's name had been added to the title, but there were major inconsistencies. Forged initials, missing signatures, sections left blank. It reeked of manipulation, possibly even fraud. But Rachel said nothing to Brian. She needed more. One morning while Brian was in the shower, his phone buzzed. Rachel hadn't been snooping, but when she saw the message preview, her stomach dropped. It was from Vivian. "Did you tell her yet? You said you would last week." "This is getting messy." There was no one else in the group chat. Just Brian. Just Vivian. Rachel froze, her heart pounding. Her hands shook as she opened the thread. There were more messages. "She'll find out eventually. Better she hears it from you. I'm tired of sneaking around. If she finds out on her own, it'll be worse." She felt the room spin around her. When Brian came out of the bathroom, she didn't yell, didn't throw the phone. She simply handed it to him and said, "Read it." He went pale, his mouth opened, but no sound came out. Finally he mumbled, "I was gonna tell you." "Tell me what, Brian?" He sat down on the edge of the bed, rubbing his hands together like he could smooth out the truth. "Mom moved into our building, 2 floors down." Rachel blinked. "What?" She wanted to be closer. She said she'd behave this time. She just wanted to watch out for us." Rachel felt cold all over. "How long?" 6 months. 6 months. That woman had been living 2 floors beneath her, watching her come and go, watching her leave for work, come home, go grocery shopping, every single day. And Brian helped her move in. Rachel stood there, silent, because if she opened her mouth, she wasn't sure what would come out. He added, almost pleading, "I didn't think it was a big deal." That was when Rachel realized he would never change. Not for her. Not even for himself. Rachel didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't even pack a bag that night. She just sat at the kitchen table long after Brian went to bed, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she never drank. The apartment felt colder than usual. Not because of the temperature, but because the place that was supposed to be home had become a stage. And she was the only one who didn't know she was acting in someone else's script. Over the next few weeks, Rachel quietly separated her life from his. She opened a new bank account, transferred her direct deposit, changed passwords, took pictures of everything she bought for the condo, the furniture, the appliances, even the art on the walls. She started working with a lawyer, someone calm and sharp, someone who didn't flinch when she laid out the mess she was living in. And she kept playing her part. She cooked dinner. She went to work. She nodded politely at Vivian when they crossed paths in the parking lot. But every move was calculated. Every smile was armor. Until the morning she got an email from her lawyer with the subject line, "We need to talk, condo ownership." Rachel opened the message and felt her stomach twist. Vivian's name wasn't just added by mistake. The lawyer explained that when they bought the condo, Brian had signed off on paperwork through Vivian's real estate friend that listed her as a co-owner, as a silent investor. The documents had been filed quietly, and because Rachel trusted Brian, she hadn't read every line. Now legally, Vivian had a stake in Rachel's home. It wasn't just betrayal, it was premeditated. And Rachel realized something chilling. This wasn't about a controlling mother-in-law anymore. This was about property, power, ownership. Vivian didn't just want control over holidays or paint colors. She wanted a say in Rachel's future. And Brian, whether out of weakness or willful ignorance, had handed it to her on a silver platter. That night, Rachel didn't sleep. She lay in bed next to the man who let his mother live 2 floors down in secret and still dared to ask if she was overreacting. She wasn't overreacting. She was waking up. And soon, everything would change. The next morning, Rachel didn't bother making coffee. She dressed in silence, left the apartment before sunrise, and drove straight to her lawyer's office with a manila folder clutched tightly in her hands. Inside were printouts, receipts, bank transfers, all proof of the money she had put into the condo. Nearly 85% of the down payment had come from her. Furniture? Hers. Renovation costs? Covered by her bonus from last year. The lawyer flipped through the documents with a slow, deliberate nod. "This helps," she said. "But the name on that deed, we'll need to dig deeper. I'm going to request records from the real estate firm. And Rachel, don't sign anything, no matter who hands it to you." Rachel left the office with a strange calmness, like the moment right after a storm breaks. Something inside her had shifted. That evening, Brian came home holding takeout and said they should talk things through. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed, like she was a problem that hadn't resolved itself yet. He sat across from her at the kitchen table and pulled out a folder. "Look," he said, "Vivian's lawyer drafted this. It's just a quick agreement, so we can divide the condo cleanly. You're already planning to leave, right? This just makes it official." Rachel opened the folder slowly, reading the first page. It was a quitclaim deed, a document that would sign her rights to the condo, her home, over to Vivian. No payout, no settlement, just a clean handover. She stared at the paper, then at Brian. "You want me to just give her the home I paid for?" "She helped with the down payment," Brian shrugged. "It's only fair." Rachel's voice was low but steady. "I've been sleeping next to you. I've built a life around you. And the whole time, you and your mother have been planning how to take it from me?" Brian leaned back, arms crossed, lips tight. "You're being dramatic." She stood up, picked up the folder, and walked it straight to the shredder. As the pages disappeared into confetti, Brian stood too, his voice sharp. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Rachel turned to him, eyes calm. "You haven't seen hard yet." And from that moment she stopped being afraid of Vivian, or Brian, or losing the life she thought she needed. She was done playing small, and she was about to remind them both exactly what she was capable of. The fallout came faster than Rachel expected. 2 days after she shredded the agreement, a for sale sign appeared outside the condo building. She saw it on her morning run, her own address listed online, open house scheduled for Sunday. She blinked in disbelief, then laughed. A short, breathless laugh that came from somewhere deep in her ribs. Vivian hadn't even bothered to tell her, had just moved forward, assuming she'd win. Rachel called the number on the sign, posing as an interested buyer. The agent confirmed everything. Vivian had claimed to be the sole owner. She said the other party had already agreed to sell, he added casually. Rachel didn't yell, she didn't curse, she simply forwarded the information to her lawyer. And by that afternoon, the property listing was pulled and an investigation had begun. Vivian naturally wasn't pleased. She started sending emails, passive-aggressive at first. "You're punishing him for loving his mother. Marriage is about sacrifice." Then they turned venomous. "You're bitter. That's why you'll always be alone." No wonder he turned to me. I was the only woman who ever truly supported him. Rachel read every line with growing disgust. What kind of mother said things like that to her son's wife? What kind of husband let her? But it wasn't just about words anymore. Rachel's lawyer had begun to uncover more. Property paperwork filed without Rachel's knowledge. Vivian's name added quietly through a shady real estate office, one that had since lost its for multiple violations. Forged documents, lies, built into the foundation of her home. Vivian wasn't just meddling, she had orchestrated everything from the start. Brian had let her? And Rachel? She was finally seeing the full picture. Not just a toxic mother-in-law or a weak husband, but a calculated effort to remove her piece by piece from her own life. That Sunday, instead of the open house, Rachel stood in the condo's kitchen with her lawyer, going over the chain of evidence. Photos, emails, transactions, a timeline stretching back 6 years. This isn't just petty, the lawyer said. It's fraud, and if we move forward strategically, we can freeze the title completely. No one can sell or transfer it until ownership is clarified. Rachel nodded. She wasn't scared anymore. Vivian thought Rachel was just a nice girl who baked pies, remembered birthdays, and smiled through gritted teeth. She was about to meet the version of Rachel who didn't back down. And this time, no one, especially not a mother-in-law in leopard print, was going to steal her home or her voice. Rachel stood at the window of her new apartment, watching the rain blur the city lights. The condo she once fought so hard for was now under investigation, her marriage dangling on a thread soaked in lies and manipulation. She should have felt broken, but instead, she felt focused. The folder on her dining table was thick. Bank statements, text threads, her own proof of every dollar that had gone into that condo. And tucked into the back was the most damning piece of all. An email forwarded to her by a former coworker of Eli's. It showed that Vivian had used her position in a family trust to shuffle funds illegally into their property deal, listing herself as a silent owner without Rachel's knowledge. The money wasn't even hers. It belonged to a trust fund for her late husband's future grandchildren. Rachel didn't flinch when she received an invitation, more like a challenge from Vivian. "Dinner at my place? Let's talk this out." It came via email. No apology, no acknowledgement, just that. She didn't respond. She showed up. The dining room smelled of roasted garlic and ego. Vivian wore pearls, of course. Eli looked like he hadn't slept in days. Rachel, by contrast, walked in wearing a navy blazer and carried nothing but her calm. "Darling," Vivian purred, "I'm so glad you came. We can finally speak like adults." Rachel took a seat without being asked. "Then let's speak like adults." Eli passed her a manila envelope. "It's just a few things to make the split easier. We want to be fair." She didn't open it. "Is that the part where I hand over my condo and vanish so your mother can list it as her investment property again?" Vivian's smile wavered. "Rachel, there's no need to bring bitterness into this. You weren't ready for ownership. I simply stepped in where you fell short." Rachel leaned forward, her voice ice. "Vivian, I paid 87% of that down payment. I have proof of every transfer. You forged your way onto a title, then tried to steal it. That's not stepping in, that's fraud." Eli opened his mouth, but Rachel cut him off. "I've spent 6 years being dismissed, gaslit, and lied to, but I won't let you erase me from the story I built." Then, from the hallway, came a voice no one expected. "I think you'd better listen to her, Vivian." Everyone turned. Aunt Margaret, Vivian's sister, walked in, holding her own envelope. Rachel blinked. "You?" Margaret nodded. "Your lawyer subpoenaed the family trust records. I was listed as a co-signatory. That's how I found out what Vivian did." Vivian shot up, furious. "You had no right. I had every right. That money was never meant to make you rich. It was meant to protect the future of the children in this family. Not for you to sneak around using Rachel's name to cover your tracks." Vivian's hands trembled. "You're turning on your own blood." "I'm standing for what's right," Margaret said. Rachel rose. "You can keep your delusions, Vivian, but you're not keeping my life." She turned to Eli. "And you were never caught in the middle. You were complicit. You handed me over piece by piece and called it love." Eli's mouth opened, but no words came. His shoulders slumped. Vivian's expression collapsed into stunned silence. Rachel walked out without looking back. 6 weeks passed. The condo was frozen under court order, Vivian's fraudulent documents now part of an active investigation. Her bank accounts were being reviewed, and her precious silent ownership claim had been reduced to a footnote in a legal case she couldn't wiggle out of. Eli had gone quiet. For once in his life, he had no one left to speak for him. Rachel didn't celebrate. Not with champagne or headlines or victory speeches. She celebrated in small, quiet ways. Like waking up in a home that was truly hers, with no forged signatures, no hidden agendas. Like making eggs the wrong way, scrambled with too much cheese and not enough structure, and smiling because she could. Like sitting on her balcony watching the world move on and finally feeling like she had caught up to it. Her lawyer called with good news. The condo would be sold, but under her full control. The court recognized her payment history and ownership claim. Vivian would walk away with nothing but a public reprimand and potential charges for breaching trust fund regulations. Rachel donated part of the condo profit to a women's legal defense fund for women like her, who'd been lied to, gaslit, manipulated out of their homes and voices. On the day she signed the final sale papers, her phone buzzed with a message from Eli. It said simply, "I didn't know how to fight for you. I only knew how to obey her. I'm sorry." Rachel stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back, "I didn't need you to fight for me. I needed you to see me. Goodbye, Eli." She hit send, then blocked the number. Not out of hate, but because the chapter was closed. Later that evening, Rachel stood in front of the mirror wearing a simple navy dress. She was heading to a dinner hosted by a nonprofit she had quietly begun supporting, one that offered housing and legal assistance to women starting over. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself, not because she had changed on the outside, but because for the first time in years, the woman staring back wasn't pretending to be small to make someone else feel big. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was building. When she walked into the restaurant, heads turned, not because of drama or scandal or whispered gossip, but because Rachel carried something rare, a quiet, undeniable dignity, the kind that doesn't need anyone's permission to exist. This story reminds us that silence in the face of disrespect is not peace, it's surrender. Rachel's journey shows the quiet power of reclaiming your voice, your space, and your future, no matter how long it takes. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a 2 in the comments if you liked it, or a 7 if it didn't quite land. And if stories like this speak to your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Your support helps us keep sharing voices that deserve to be heard.